Welcome to Shannon's Lumber Industry Update for this special Halloween episode. Today we're going to talk about magical woods. Woods that have history, folklore, maybe even woods used for wands. I got a question from a listener whose daughter happens to be a Harry Potter fanatic and wondered, what exactly are the right woods to use for wands? Now, there is a lot of fan fiction and a lot of canon written about the Harry Potter universe. Kind of reminds me of Star Wars with just the sheer volume of stuff written that George Lucas never intended, or in this case, J.K. Rowling never intended. But Mr. Ollivander, the guy who created wands, let's get rid of that little pumpkin off the screen, said every single wand is unique and will depend for its character on the particular tree and magical creature from which it derives its materials. Moreover, each wand, from the moment it finds its ideal owner, will begin to learn from and teach its human partner. Therefore, each of the wood types I like to work with best and ought not to be taken to describe any individual wand, but rather be taken of their own individual merit and power inherent within that tree. So Ollivander aside, this is the Lumber Industry Update. I'm your host, Shannon Rogers, as usual. And we're going to have a little bit of fun this particular Halloween, and we're going to talk about woods with folklore. Woods that may be seen to have magical properties. There is so much written on the magical properties of wood you would not believe. I started digging into this and was just blown away. So again, this entire episode is brought to us or inspired by one of you who wrote in and said, hey, my daughter loves Harry Potter. What about wandwoods? So if you have questions for the show, if you have a suggestion for the show, go to lumberupdate.com. There's a contact form there. Of course, you can also just email me directly at lumberupdate@gmail.com. And, you know, this show is made possible by you who sponsor this show through Patreon. Now, every month I do these featured species stickers. Last month was Nara. Well, I have a particular bit of news, kind of unfortunate news, but could be fortunate. Had a bit of a mix-up with my sticker printer, and the stickers for the month of October may not be here for several more weeks. So I decided not to do a featured species this month and respond to so many of you who've emailed me and said, hey, I missed a sticker, or how do I buy past stickers? So those of you who are Patreon sponsors at the Walnut tier and above, who get stickers every month, check Patreon. I've already emailed you, but if you're just listening to this now, send me an email, lumberupdate@gmail.com, and tell me which sticker you missed. So this is really your opportunity to get those past stickers. So send me an email, put sticker ketchup in the subject line just to make my life a little bit easier, and tell me, do you want cherry, black walnut, koa, European beech, sapele, hemlock, iroko, wingay, nara, tamo ash, eastern cottonwood, sweet chestnut, American hornbeam, yellow beech, American elm, bald cypress, or paulownia? Wow, we've covered a lot, and I've been planning on kind of taking a break in order to do this catch up, so now is a perfect time for that. Now, if you are one of those incredible people who has been with us since the very beginning and has every single sticker, I want you to email me too and tell me, hey, I have every single sticker because I have something very special for you. And if you decide to sponsor the show in the month of October, you get your opportunity to choose any of those species that I mentioned. And if you can't remember all those, just send me an email and say, what was that list again? And I'll send it back to you. I'm happy to send out any of the stickers that you want from the collection of, I think there's 17 or 19 of them there. So again, a little bit of a misfortune that the printer didn't get me this month's in time, but we'll take it as an opportunity to catch up some of you on previous stickers. Okay, so what are we really talking about here? I think what's interesting is, you can read all of the, Harry Potter lore, and you can dig into all kinds of like Wiccan witch type websites that talk about the various mystical properties of wood. You also can read a lot of folklore. And what I find interesting is the same species of wood do come up again and again. And I mean, let's be real. J.K. Rowling is an accomplished author, like most accomplished authors. She probably put a fair bit of research into wood. So when I go on to, what is it? I think it's called Pottermore or HarryPotter.com or something like that. I mean, there's so many of these sites. They'll list a lot of woods that if you do a little bit of digging or you just type, Elder, everybody who's watched Harry Potter, read Harry Potter is familiar with the Elder wand. You do what are the magical properties of Elder and you will find a lot of stuff. And then you find out which woods are considered to be magical. And a lot of the things that pop up like Laurel and Walnut, Hornbeam, they also show up in J.K. Rowling's work. So why is this? Why are so many of these woods to be considered magical? Well, I wanted to kind of go down a list, and the big ones that really come up, and really, if you had asked me before I did any of this research, the first one that come to my mind would be hawthorn. Hawthorn is just universally recognized across Ireland as to be, if you want to meet a fairy, go hang out under a hawthorn at midnight and you'll go find a hawthorn tree. If you've ever read the books Artemis Fowl, the fairies come through the underworld to the surface dwellers using hawthorn trees. Black walnut is one that continually came up in research. Of course, Elder continues to show up, as I mentioned already. Hornbeam is another one. Laurel, Sycamore, Hazel, Alder. Rowan is another one that I saw time and time again. And a couple of mentions to things like blackthorn, redwood, cypress, aspen, beech, and soft maple. But I wanted to kind of go through because overall what you find is a lot of these woods, they're said to offer protection. And you can look at North American, Native American lore that talks about how this tree was the protector of the village. You find the same thing over in Africa. The Iroko was a protector of a village. The Western red cedar was a protector of Native Americans up in the northwest of North America. The yew trees were known to be protective elements, not only for Middle Ages English villages, but the yew tree was considered to be so powerful that it was used to make things like shields and to some extent wooden armor, and of course ended up being the primary tree used for making the British longbow, which, from a technological advancement might have created the British Empire. It was such a big deal. Going back far and far and far, they all have some sort of protective element. Well, let's think about this. Wood, today we call it biophilic design. Like, oh, there's wood walls. I feel safe. I feel comfortable. I feel protected. I feel homey. And really, protection is feeling comfortable. And wood offers that in so many areas. Plus, it's strong. It was the building material next to maybe stone. And to the common man who didn't really work in stone, if they worked with stone, they were doing it for some, royal or nobleman or something like that. Wood is what we built our homes out of. When it wasn't a mud hut or a straw hut and you graduated to like luxury, it was a wooden dwelling. Wood protected us. And all of the folklore from all over the world, I found Aboriginal stories. I found, medieval European stories. I found stories from like the Druids, certainly lots of North American, Native American stories, even some stories from South America, Mayan and Aztec. That's more Mexico than South America, Central America. So all of them talk about being protective. So like, for instance, walnut, it's known as protection. And this was thought because of the hard outer shell around the walnut, the fruit of the walnut tree, that was very difficult to break into. You could actually use that shell as what's it called? Is it a pestle or the mortar that does the grinding? I think it's the mortar. No, the pestle does the grinding. Anyway, they use the walnut shell to actually grind grain on a rock. And it was very protective in that particular nature because it was really hard to get into, and it symbolized the fruit, the preciousness was protected by this hard outer shell. It's also been known to be a source of poison. And many, I don't know, I'm sure this is not the correct term, or it's some sort of cultural appropriation to say the shaman, the medicine woman, whoever it was, would use the walnut to create many, many poisons. Well, today we know the walnut, specifically we're talking about the black walnut, is an allelopathic tree, meaning the Euglandaceae, the Euglandose, I'm not getting the pronunciation right, but the Eugland, whatever, that's part of Eugland's nigra, is an enzyme that actually can be quite poisonous. And that's what really derives people's walnut allergies. That's why they say don't use walnut shavings in like a horse barn, because it can make the horses sick. It's also one of the things that tends to kill a lot of plants that grow near a walnut. Pliny the Elder, ancient Rome, talked about how don't plant things in the shade of a walnut tree or it will die. So you can imagine why early lore thought the walnut tree is mystical and a walnut tree has a spirit within it that kills everything around it. The other thing is it is known as an expeller, something that will drive away evil. Again, that allelopathic nature, it's killing things around it. And if you planted a walnut tree near your home, yes, it might kill stuff around the home, but it would also keep the evil spirits out. It would expel the bad, keep out the bad juju. But eventually it became to be known as medicinal as well. Embracing that poison in a lower dose is almost like a vaccine, introducing a virus in your body so your body can fight it and get stronger. So the black walnut has a lot of actual technical properties we know today that can lend to that mystical nature. And I hope I'm not like killing the mystery of this whole thing. If you can't tell, I'm really a scientist by nature. I love it. I loved the stories. I loved Harry Potter. I love a lot of that stuff, but I find it really interesting that there tends to be all of this folklore has some reasonings behind it. What's another one that I like? Well, the hawthorn again. It's a magical wood in Ireland. There's a lot of duality in folklore between the light and the dark, and a lot of times it can be the dividing line between the light forces and the dark forces. It's a powerful ally when approached correctly with respect, and the tree is tended to her. Like, often said, the fairy folk were, lovers of nature, and the hawthorn was a source of many of their powers, but also a source of darkness, to the point where if hawthorn trees were cut down, bad things would happen. And to this day, many roads in Ireland are actually diverted to avoid cutting down a lone hawthorn tree. Farmers will actually work around them and leave them standing in a field, and even put fences around them, because it's bad luck to cross a hawthorn tree. And cutting down a hawthorn tree, I think that counts as crossing a hawthorn tree. The hawthorn is known as the fairy tree, said to be the meeting place for fairies. It's believed that fairies live under the hawthorn and guard it. So again, don't touch it. Don't cut it down. But the hawthorn is also a symbol of love and protection. It's said to bring good luck to the owner and prosperity to the land around it. It's associated with fertility, and young women should take a sprig of blossom on May 1st to attract a husband. Let's break this down. Hawthorn is an interesting tree. It does make lovely flowers, but those flowers have a ridiculously short half-life, and they stink really, really quickly. So when it's in spring, when they talk about take a sprig of blossom on May 1st, well, it's going to smell lovely. And guess what? Perfume, not only to prevent us from stinking, was, to this day, it's used to attract a husband. But it would quickly wilt and rot. The same thing, if you cut a hawthorn branch, it smells horrible. It smells like decaying flesh. It's a really, really bad smell. And it's one of those things, actually, if you've been around in the spring, as any of the blossoms, whether it's a tulip, poplar, or whatever, start to rot, that's what we're smelling. And that was considered to be, a very bad omen. So the hawthorn tree would provide these beautiful sprigs and this beautiful smell, but then like 2 days later, it would have this decaying flesh feel. And that's that line between light and dark that's associated with the hawthorn. I think it's kind of interesting that the science of this stuff continues to play out in the actual morphology of the tree. Iroko is a fun one. I've actually talked about that as this featured species. Iroko comes from Africa. The spirit of the Iroko man is said to live within all of the Iroko trees. Now, the Iroko tree is enormous, huge buttress trunk, super, super wide trunk. And it is said that if you stare at an Iroko tree, it will paralyze you until the Iroko man comes and takes you to the underworld. And therefore, any Iroko tree that is cut down has to be essentially blessed, doused in holy water to thank the Iroko man, but also to keep the Iroko man from coming back. Anything built from that tree that was not blessed will damn you. You will be cursed. Like, King Tut's tomb excavators were cursed. It's the same thing with the Iroko tree. And to this day, there are people harvesting Iroko trees that will say a prayer and bless every single Iroko that is taken down. I find that fascinating that even to today, it's passing through. We really should talk about the Elder Wand. I mean, come on, Voldemort, Harry Potter, let's do this. The branches of the Elder Tree are known to be full of ancient magic. In fact, within the branches dwells a dryad, a fairy, and it stands ready to pass judgment between life and death. You approach the dryad, and the dryad determines if you live or you die. That's one powerful dryad. It's called the Hildamore. The Elder Tree Mother is, in medieval folklore, said to be, this was the tree that Judas was tied to. The traitorous apostle was tied to the Elder Tree because he would be cursed being tied to the tree as punishment. Not even a branch could be cut from the elder without the permission of the spirit that dwelled within. So very similar to what we're talking about with the Iroko man and the Iroko tree. This very tree was also a protector against dark witchcraft. This comes out of medieval England, a powerful ward against evil spirits. The common folk of the old English countryside took to tying the leaves of the elder to their door and windows, for it was believed that no witch would enter a house protected in this way. So, the custom was to plant an elder bush, trim it in the form of a cross, and it could protect not only a home, but possibly a grave that it would put over top of. There's just so much folklore and magical mystery tied into the elder tree. It was both feared and loved. And is it no wonder that this duality is the wood that's used for the wand that's at the center of the Harry Potter story, the duality between Harry and Voldemort? It's kind of cool. Modern day, we know that there's a lot of enzymes in the elder tree that not only protect us against pathogens, but that can also open the door for pathogens. It can be a poisonous tree, but it also can be quite a healing tree. And there's a lot of medicinal elements that come from the elder. Kind of interesting. Hornbeam, I'm a big fan of this. I talked again about this as a featured species, also known as musclewood because of the way its bark looks. This is far and away, I said every one of these tends to have some sort of protective nature. Hornbeam was its primary thing. It is a protective wood. And if you have a hornbeam tree planted near you, you will have good luck. You will be protected. And if you think about it, hornbeam is very, very hard. Hornbeam also, because it's called musclewood, it looks like it's standing guard. It could be known as a ladder between worlds. Folklore in, let me get my sources right here. This is from England again. So the hornbeam is sometimes depicted as a ladder between the worlds. And again, the way the tree kind of, intertwines together, it could very well be seen as this like standout tree that's where we need to go to access the other world. It's a source of life and wisdom. Interesting. I don't know. It is kind of a twisted tree. Maybe it looks wizened and old. The physical form of supernatural beings. So in folklore, the hornbeam is sometimes said to manifest as the physical form of a spirit or a fairy. And here again, that musclewood, you look at the trunk of a hornbeam and it's very sinewy, and the way the morphology of the tree is kind of twisty branches and things like that, you can look at a hornbeam and very easily, without a lot of imagination, say, oh, that looks like a man. That looks like, some sort of bipedal creature. And the muscles make it look kind of imposing. Very, very muscly creature. The Celts actually cultivated the hornbeam tree, which they associated with loyalty and spirituality. But most importantly, the hornbeam is considered to be a tree of hard work and conscientiousness. It is a tree that grows very well in a lot of climates and grows very well when other things, shrubs, bushes, trees, etc., do not grow. So kind of interesting. as I went through this, I found the same thing with laurel. I found the same thing with sycamore, strength, protection. The laurel particularly was known to be good for prophecy and divination, and you'll find a lot of laurel wreaths in ancient Greece and ancient Rome. In fact, the god Apollo wore a laurel wreath, god of wisdom. So yeah, that's kind of interesting how the leaves themselves created a lot of this folklore, and at the same time, those leaves were used for medicinal purposes and thought to be something to make you smarter. Well, it turns out there is a bit of opium in those leaves. Grind it up, yeah, you're smarter. No, you're just really hopped up on opiates. Because the laurel is evergreen, it's a symbol of protection and eternal life. Everything around you is losing its leaves and looking, like it's dying, and the laurel just keeps on cooking. So it was considered, plant it and you will have long life around it. Sycamore is particularly known for rebirth and luck. Because if you've seen a sycamore, it has a very mottled bark and it kind of gets peely and such. And it reminded people of this idea of rebirth. And it was considered to be good luck for a pregnant woman to sit beneath a sycamore tree. It was also believed to keep the plague away during the Black Death. And I dug into this a little bit, and it was felt that if the plague came to town, because again, they didn't know how it was passing, the sycamores would absorb it. And that was that mottled peeling bark. It was the sycamore actually taking on the Black Death and part of it dying, but preventing it from getting any further. And I find that really fascinating. Hazel. Now, hazel has a whole bunch of stuff from a medicinal property going into it. So it's known constantly, again, for protection, but for luck, for fertility, helpful against rheumatism. It can give you wisdom. It's also known as an aphrodisiac. But I love this. Carrying hazelnuts in an orange pouch, it has to be an orange pouch, is said to bestow invisibility. It will grant wishes. Wearing a crown of hazel twigs is said to make a wish come true. And more importantly, legend has it that witches use witch hazel to cure broken hearts. So a lot of like good vibes, luck and fertility and wisdom and things like that. And again, it can be a very healing tree. So you can imagine if somebody's just feeling badly and they take this and they start to feel better, their mood improves, they feel lucky, they feel great, it makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Alder, interesting. It's a very popular wood that's unyielding. Ollivander says it's helpful for considerate and likable owners. What I found was interesting about the alder is, I'm not exactly sure what Ollivander was talking about, but if you've ever seen this, it is a wood that changes red when cut very quickly. And that it was taken that the tree was bleeding. And it was symbolized as bleeding in a supernatural association. There was a spirit in this tree that when you cut it, started to bleed and started to die. And it freaked people out. It was considered to be a gateway to other realms and potentially a place where the bad guys would come through. And these were the evil spirits that were bleeding when you cut the tree. So regularly, these trees were pruned to keep the spirit within from getting too strong. They were bleeding it to keep it from getting too strong and crossing over. But at the same time, this was thought, if there's an evil spirit in here, this is an enchanted piece of wood. So they used the alder to make shields. Thought it would provide a greater protection and certainly the higher hardness. And more importantly, alder has an extremely high resistance to fire. So, Greek fire came along, flaming arrows came along. It hit into your shield made out of alder, and it was super hard. So it stuck, but it didn't catch fire. And people thought this tree is magic because it's not catching fire from my flaming arrow. Now, Greek fire will just stay there forever, but even then, the shield wouldn't catch fire. I found that very, very cool. And this continues to go on time after time with so many of these different species. I thought there was one more that I dug into. I found a lot of the similar things with poplar, interesting enough. Rowan, for Harry Potter fans. I think it's, what's her name? The newspaper girl, the really odd one. Luna, I believe, had a rowan wood wand. It's considered a magical tree that protects against witchcraft and enchantment. The tree's red berries are thought to be the best color for fighting evil, and are associated with magic. Each berry has a tiny 5-pointed star or pentagram opposite its stalk, which is an ancient protective symbol. You can imagine, the pentagram goes back millennia. And if you saw that shape in nature, you would immediately think, oh, this is a ward. The berries were often ground up and turned into various potions and things like that were thought to give protection. Here again, Neo-Druidism considered the Rowan tree to be the portal tree, an opening between this world and another world. The Rowan tree is believed to help clear the mind and open up a person's inspirations. I didn't dig this far, but I'm willing to bet if we look into the enzymes and such of the Rowan tree, you're going to find some psychedelic stuff going on in there. The Rowan tree is used in vibrational medicine because it is believed to be able to tune our bodies into nature. Don't really know where that's coming from, but how cool. That one came up in 4 different sources that I looked at. But more importantly, rowan berry tea to this day is known to be high in antioxidants. It's known to fight kidney disease, diabetes, and rheumatism. Cooked rowan berry puree can help with diarrhea. And the fresh rowan berry fruit juice can strengthen the immune system. Well, we know from the berries and the enzymes and the extractives in the tree, in some ways, it's used in modern medicine today. And I think I dug a little bit further. I don't think it's actually used now. I think it's synthesized a little bit through modern pharmaceutical means. But yeah, that's what it was used for way back then. You find the same story with willow, in the Saliceae family. Again, salicylic acid, aspirin, comes from that tree. The rowan tree's timber has been used for carving rune staves, walking sticks, and was especially treasured for its divining properties. So today we look at a cool tree with cool grain, cool figure, and you think, I'm going to build something out of it that's going to be cool. Back then, it was function. The rowan tree was gnarled and twisted and super hard. It made a great walking stick, but it was a nice, benefit that it had all this other mysticism to it. And, if somebody tells you that walking stick you have is going to be good luck, you may very well have good luck, or at least your mind thinks you're having good luck because you've got this positive outlook on things. Suddenly you become a glass half full type person. Or you know what? Maybe I'm totally off my rocker and there is some mystical force at play here, and it actually did create good luck. I don't really care. I find it really fascinating that all of these trees have extensive mysticism around them. And a lot of it's very same. It'll make you wise. It'll heal you. It'll protect you. And a lot of times it just comes down to what was growing in the region and what were people's experience with it. They were harvesting these trees. They were using these trees for some things. If they weren't harvesting them, they were growing things around the tree. And if the walnut tree killed it, that tree is evil. If the things prospered underneath it, it was a tree that provided good luck. And we know through allelopathy that the walnut can kill some things. We also know that some of these more riparian trees are going to have really nice, fertile, wet soil, and things are going to grow really well around it. But they looked at that tree and said, that tree promotes fertility. Look at all my tomato plants. Look at all my corn that's doing so well in around the base of that. So yeah, maybe I remove some of the mystique, maybe I remove some of the science from this whole thing, but I just think so much of this folklore, so much of these early beliefs have some founding. Like, it worked. This tree worked for that. This tree worked for this. This tree drove away the evil spirits. The physical appearance of the tree, like the sycamore, it was taking on the Black Death, and the bark was peeling away and shedding the dead, the dead bark, but that prevent the Black Death from getting into humans and killing the humans. Very fascinating stuff. And I hope this was just kind of certainly it's a cursory look. If you're interested in this, I kid you not, pick a species of tree, plug it into Google and say, what are the magical properties of insert favorite species here? You will be shocked at how much folklore is out there. And if nothing else, most people listening to the show, if you're listening to the show, you love wood. You love working with wood. You probably like trees. Just about every woodworker I know is a lover of trees. And the history and the stories and the mystique goes back as long as there have been humans and before. So maybe next time you're working with walnut, look it up and find out some of the mysteries that came with walnut, or listen to the show again because I talked about walnut a lot. And it might strengthen your appreciation for the wood you're working with. It might even make you feel lucky. It might even make your headache go away. Call it the placebo effect. I don't care. Personally, I think woodworking makes your headache go away from a meditative kind of Zen flow state. So by the time this gets published, it will almost be Halloween. So happy Halloween. Go get some mystical wand wood, build a wand, and happy wizarding.